The courtroom was already electric before the first word was spoken. Rows of reporters leaned forward, cameras clicking in rapid bursts. Every lens hungry to capture what promised to be a clash unlike any America had ever witnessed. At the center of it all sat Judge Judy, her presence as commanding as a thunderstorm calm, sharp, and impossible to ignore. Across from her, Donald Trump shifted in his chair, his trademark bravado flickering like a candle in the wind. It began with a smirk. Trump leaned forward, his voice dripping with sarcasm, tossing out an interruption meant to bulldoze the proceedings. The room stirred, some gasped. Others chuckled nervously. But Judge Judy didn't blink. She let the silence stretch, her piercing eyes cutting through the air like a blade. And then, with surgical precision, she delivered a single line that snapped through the courtroom like a whip. "Mr. Trump, this is not your rally. This is my courtroom." The impact was instant. Reporters froze mid-scribble, jaws tightened, and the entire gallery seemed to inhale at once. Trump's expression faltered just slightly, but enough. It was the first crack in the armor of a man who prided himself on being untouchable. Judy leaned back, her tone cool, her authority absolute. In that single moment, she flipped the balance of power. For decades, Trump had been the one commanding attention, the one setting the rules, the one drowning out his critics with volume and spectacle. But here, under Judy's gaze, the script was inverted. The arrogance met immovable steel. And in that sharp exchange, millions watching across America knew this was no ordinary confrontation. This was history unfolding in real time. But what came next would shatter even those expectations and leave the entire nation stunned into silence. For a brief moment after Judy's words, the courtroom was paralyzed. It wasn't just a clash between two famous personalities, it was something larger, something America itself seemed to be holding its breath for. Judge Judy had long been a symbol of no-nonsense justice, the straight-talking truth-teller who cut through excuses and theatrics with razor precision. She was the nation's unofficial moral compass, figure people turned to when they wanted clarity in a world clouded by spin. Donald Trump, on the other hand, had built his empire on unchecked ego and spectacle. To his supporters, he was bold and unapologetic. To his critics, he was the embodiment of bluster, a man who mistook volume for strength and arrogance for leadership. Here, these two worlds collided head-on. The stakes were no longer about winning an argument. They were about defining which vision of America would prevail, one rooted in dignity and accountability, or one dominated by ego and distortion. Every word exchanged reverberated beyond those four walls. Millions across the nation were glued to screens, their own values mirrored in the confrontation. Immigrants saw in Judy a protector of fairness. Progressives saw in Trump the excesses they had warned against. This wasn't a courtroom spate. It was a referendum on the soul of the country, and that's why the silence carried so much weight. Every pause, every stare-down felt like a battle line being drawn. One wrong word could become the headline that dominated news cycles, the clip that flooded social media, the moment that shifted narratives. Judy knew it. Trump, for once, seemed to sense it too. The tension rose with every second, the nation teetering between two futures. And just when the tension seemed unbearable, Trump made the mistake that sealed his downfall. Long before he set foot in that courtroom, Donald Trump had mastered a performance that millions had come to recognize. He thrived on spectacle, on turning every confrontation into theater, every criticism into an opportunity to boast louder. When pressed by journalists, he mocked them. Cornered by facts, he twisted words until truth bent into something unrecognizable. For decades, it was a strategy that seemed to work deflection, dressed up as dominance, arrogance disguised as strength. His contradictions were impossible to ignore. He campaigned as the candidate of law and order, yet found himself constantly clashing with the very institutions designed to uphold the law. He thundered about accountability for others, but ducked it whenever it came knocking on his own door. Lawsuits trailed him like shadows, settlements quietly silent stories, and critics were reduced to nicknames that made headlines but never answered the substance of their accusations. Again and again he escaped the reckoning others thought was surely coming. There was a smugness in the way he carried himself, belief that rules were for other people, norms were inconveniences meant to be bulldozed. At rallies, his confidence was intoxicating to supporters, but in boardrooms and courtrooms, it came off as entitlement. He would interrupt, dominate the air, force his presence into every corner of the room until no one else could breathe. And when he sensed weakness, he struck, doubling down with the relentlessness of someone convinced that volume alone could rewrite reality. Too many Americans? This was the Trump they knew all too well, the man who spun chaos into currency. Dodged accountability not just once, but habitually, each escape emboldening him further. Every time he wriggled out of consequence, it reinforced the illusion that he was untouchable. And perhaps, deep down, he began to believe it himself. But history has a way of catching up to arrogance. No empire built on bluster stands forever. For all the headlines he generated, and all the storms he rode through, there remained one truth. Sooner or later, someone with enough authority, enough clarity, and enough courage would pierce the armor. And that day had come. But little did he know, he was about to meet the one woman he couldn't bulldoze. Born and raised in the bustling streets of Brooklyn, Judge Judy Sheindlin's path to authority was forged in the fires of everyday struggle. From an early age, she witnessed the resilience required to navigate a world where fairness was often elusive and justice slow to arrive. Her family life was a tapestry of challenges, hard work, sharp lessons, and moments that demanded both courage and discernment. These early experiences did more than shape her character. They instilled a deep understanding of human nature, an instinct for seeing truth through the noise, a relentless drive to stand firm when others wavered. She did not rise through privilege or connections. Every accolade, every courtroom victory was earned through discipline, meticulous preparation, and an unwavering moral compass. Judy's career began in the trenches of law, where she learned not just to interpret statutes, but to navigate the complexities of human behavior. Her reputation grew quickly. She was firm yet fair, direct yet compassionate. A judge whose courtroom became a stage for truth, clarity, and accountability. People trusted her not because she sought approval, but because she demanded honesty and clarity from everyone who stepped before her. Her style was unmistakable. Judy Sheindlin possessed a razor-sharp intellect that paired with a no-nonsense demeanor. She did not tolerate posturing, excuses, or deception. In a world where charisma often eclipsed competence, she demonstrated that authority derived from skill, integrity, and moral courage, not spectacle. Audiences nationwide felt an immediate connection. She became the voice of everyday Americans who longed to see fairness and accountability restored, to immigrants, to the hardworking, to those who had been overlooked. Judy represented a mirror of their own struggles, someone who had climbed every rung honestly, someone who refused to let arrogance intimidate her, but her influence extended beyond the courtroom. In living rooms across the country, millions watched her enforce order, mediate conflict, and deliver justice with both firmness and fairness. Her presence became a symbol. Dignity in action, the power of reason over bluster, the triumph of preparation, and principle over entitlement and theatrics. It was this combination of experience, authority, and unwavering self-respect that made her uniquely equipped to face the audacity of Donald Trump. Every lesson from Brooklyn, every precedent set in her court had led her to this defining moment. Judy was not just a judge. She was a moral anchor, a living embodiment of integrity, a reminder that strength and justice are inseparable. And when destiny brought her face to face with Trump, the world braced for an explosion. The tension in the courtroom was electric, almost tangible, as Trump leaned forward, smirking, ready to dominate the room with his usual bravado. He mocked the procedures, interrupted with barbed comments, and waved off objections with a flourish that had worked for him countless times before. Every word, every gesture was calculated to unnerve, to make the room and, more importantly, Judge Judy waver. But she did not. Not for a second. Judy's eyes met his with an unwavering calm, Her voice, steady and precise, cut through the noise like a scalpel. Liner after one-liner struck with surgical accuracy, each remark puncturing the grandiose bubble of ego that Trump had built around himself. The contrast was stark. His theatrics versus her discipline. His arrogance versus her dignity. Each exchange felt like a round in a heavyweight fight, blows traded in rapid succession, the audience on the edge of their seats. Trump tried every tactic. Sarcasm, overconfidence, the occasional misplaced joke meant to lighten the tension. He leaned into the gallery, gestured at cameras, and even tried to bait her with personal digs. Yet Judy's composure never faltered. Her responses were concise, piercing, and layered with authority. Every interruption he made was met with a calm rebuttal that left him momentarily exposed, his confidence slipping just enough for the room to notice. The crowd reacted audibly, gasps, murmurs, whispers of astonishment as each jab from Judy landed. It was more than a debate. It was a battle of principles, an embodiment of every story Americans had lived through. From boardrooms to break rooms, watching arrogance collide with integrity, each passing second heightened the stakes, the air thick with anticipation. No one dared look away. The pattern was clear. Trump was on the defensive, his theatrics failing against the relentless precision of a woman who had built her life on truth, justice, and unshakable authority. The audience could feel that the pivot was coming, the moment when dignity would finally seize the upper hand in a clash that had kept the nation riveted. Then came the moment no one saw coming. Judy's mic drop takedown. The courtroom held its collective breath as Judge Judy leaned forward, her voice calm but unyielding. Every eye was fixed on her, every camera trained, every heartbeat syncing with the rhythm of what was about to unfold. Trump had entered with his usual storm of arrogance, confident that theatrics alone could carry him. But Judy had waited, patient, letting him overextend, allowing the cracks to show. Now it was time. She began methodically, each statement precise, each word a scalpel, cutting through layers of bluster. She exposed contradictions he had long skirted, dissecting promises of law and order against actions that flaunted accountability. She reminded him of claims twisted beyond recognition, lies dressed up as victories, and hypocrisy paraded as triumph. Each fact landed like a hammer strike, echoing through the room, shaking the carefully constructed fortress of ego he had relied on for decades. Trump attempted to interrupt, but his voice faltered under the weight of her logic. Sneered, he gestured wildly, but Judy's composure was a shield no bravado could penetrate. She countered every barb with cold clarity, her sentences tight, her timing flawless. The contrast was stunning, his bluster chaotic and desperate, her authority calm, deliberate, irresistible. The audience felt the shift in real time. A nation watching as someone who embodied dignity dismantled someone who had thrived on spectacle. Then came the moment of finality. With a measured pause letting the silence stretch, Judy delivered the line that would echo across newsrooms, living rooms, and social feeds for weeks. It was sharp, undeniable, and devastating, a statement that exposed him completely, leaving no room for deflection, no space to recover. Trump stammered, searching for footing that did not exist. His usual confidence faltered, replaced by something rare: vulnerability. The room froze. Reporters stopped typing, cameras lingered, and viewers across America witnessed the untouchable, humbled before their eyes. It was more than a courtroom victory, it was a moment of moral triumph. Integrity had risen above ego. Justice, delivered with dignity, had pierced through bluster. The audience felt vindicated, inspired, and riveted by the sheer force of her authority. But the shockwaves didn't end in that courtroom. Exploded. Across the nation, within minutes, the courtroom's seismic moment had erupted across every screen in America. Hashtags praising Judge Judy surged to the top of trending lists, while memes capturing Trump's stunned silence flooded Twitter feeds. Clip after clip replayed her piercing words, each share amplifying the ripple effect. Commentators dissected every nuance, replaying the takedown in slow motion, marveling at the precision and authority that had left even the most seasoned observers speechless. Celebrities joined the chorus. Reactions that ranged from admiration to outright astonishment. Ordinary Americans cheered from living rooms, offices, and cafes, sharing clips with captions that celebrated dignity over arrogance, discipline over bluster. It was a unifying moment. People from different walks of life found themselves aligned, inspired by a woman who had stood unshakable against a figure long seen as untouchable. Every retweet, every comment, every echo of laughter reinforced a truth the nation needed to see. Justice, integrity, and moral courage could still prevail. In a world dominated by spectacle, Trump's silence, brief yet thunderous, became the meme of the decade. A symbol of arrogance meeting its reckoning. And yet beyond the laughter, there was something deeper happening. The courtroom drama had ended, but Judge Judy's words resonated far beyond its walls. She reframed the clash not as a spectacle of personalities, but as a lesson in values. Truth versus lies, dignity versus arrogance, service versus self-interest. Her calm authority reminded the nation that the measure of a person or a country was not in bluster or fame, but in the courage to uphold what is right, even when it's difficult or unpopular. In every line she spoke, Americans saw the reflection of their own hopes for fairness and integrity. It became a reaffirmation that principles matter, that moral courage can cut through noise and spectacle, and that accountability is not optional, it is essential. Judy's victory was symbolic. It represented the power of preparation, wisdom, and unwavering ethics triumphing over ego and entitlement. For viewers, the lesson was immediate and personal. Each person watching could feel the weight of dignity restored, the validation of believing in justice, and the inspiration to demand the same standards in their own lives and communities. The clash was no longer about one man's reputation. It was about collective values. It's about what kind of America people wanted to see reflected in its leaders. Because in the end, the real verdict wasn't for Trump. It was for America itself. The courtroom may have emptied, but the impact of that moment continued to ripple across the nation. Judge Judy had done more than win a debate. She had proven that arrogance, no matter how loud or powerful, can be silenced by unwavering dignity. Millions had witnessed a moral compass in action, a reminder that truth, preparation, and courage hold more weight than spectacle or bluster. As the clips circulated, as the hashtags trended, and as conversations sparked, in homes and online communities, one thing was clear. This was more than a clash between two figures. It was a call to the nation to value integrity, to celebrate those who stand firm in the face of intimidation, to recognize that real strength lies in steadfast principles. If you believe dignity must always triumph, share this story, subscribe, and join the movement. Be part of the conversation. Be part of a generation that refuses to be swayed by arrogance and refuses to overlook truth. Let this moment remind you that courage and justice are contagious, that together, voices raised for fairness can shape the course of a nation. Judge Judy's courtroom may have closed, but the lesson endures, and it's a challenge. It's an inspiration and a beacon for everyone who refuses to let ego dictate the rules.